Hi, everyone. I am Becky Nova of Live Free with Becky Nova, where we talk about not only being able to live free and mortgage free, but also learning how to find that financial freedom in your life. I'm also the founder of Lady Landlords, and I am here today to give you a couple tips about what you can be doing to really help with your time. So, one of the reasons this comes up is one, we are all living in an absolutely crazy market right now. I think no matter kind of where you are in the country, you are probably struggling with houses just going on market and literally getting offers over ask just even minutes after the listing actually went live. I know this is a struggle for a lot of the women in the Lady Landlords Facebook group. And I want to make sure that we address things and we're realizing that there are still things that we can be able to do to move forward, even while we are trying to find our next deal. I've noticed over the years that I've been investing in properties that there tends to be a little bit of a wave in how property buying kind of works. So I get really excited at that beginning part where I actually get to go look at properties and get to go figure out what my next purchase is going to be. That is actually probably one of my favorite parts to do within real estate investing. But what part of the struggle then is once I get that property, once I find that and actually get my accepted offer, a lot of it ends up being paperwork. And now we're trying to get the mortgage put in place or however I'm financing that deal. And that can take a good amount of months. So if that is now your downtime between your next property, there are things that we can be doing that time during that time. And that's what I want to address today. Also, once you now have that paperwork kind of going, you are probably then going to be able to rent that property out, or maybe if you're doing a flip, you need to start doing renovations. But if you have tenants moving in, we now know then we have to go through, make sure to screen really well, especially with the CDC moratorium still in place. Then we have to get those tenants moved in and get settled. That tends to be a little bit of a busier time as well. I've noticed that when we first have tenants move into our properties, the first like month or so is them really kind of learning the space, then making sure they know what day garbage pickup is on, all those little things that you need to know when you move into a new property. But once they really kind of get in there and get settled, they're kind of on autopilot. And I know something that my husband and I like to do is then to kind of take a little bit of a break after that. Once we get tenants in there, now I feel like we can kind of settle. That tends to be when he and I will take a vacation or go somewhere or do something a little bit different. Until then, we are ready to purchase our next property. So that to me is kind of that life cycle of buying a property. But right now, I understand that for a lot of you ladies out there, it is taking a little bit longer to find that perfect deal and that next property for you, just because of what a tough market that we are in. So I have a couple different things that I thought of that we can all be working on that might be able to help as we're going through that trying to buy kind of stage. So one thing that's really important is we need to be very clear and focused on what the different tasks are that we actually need to accomplish. So one thing I'm a very big fan of is always making sure to have your to-do lists very, very clear. This is also incredibly important if you have other things going on in your life. If you have kids, if you're taking care of a family member, if you're in a relationship, we need to make sure that we are still doing those life things too. In addition to, if you are still working a full-time job, maybe you also have a part-time job, maybe you also have a side hustle. All of those different things then tend to kind of have different competing priorities with what we are doing within our real estate investing journey. So having a very clear list of what needs to be done, and you can actually do this for any of that house buying life cycle that we just talked about. But it's very important to make sure that you have which tasks need to be done, what's going to be upcoming, if there's any important deadlines that you need to make sure to reach for those, to have that all very clearly laid out. So personally, I like a very strong to-do list. I am a very big fan of my calendar. If you know me personally, you know I do everything based on what my calendar tells me that I should be doing at this point of time on that day of that week. So make sure that you identify what those tasks are, and also if there's anything holding you up from that. So for example, if you need to get pre-approved, well, that's not something that you can actually personally do on your own. That's something that then you're going to have to find that mortgage broker. You're going to have to make those calls, get that paperwork together, and send that over to be able to get that. So make sure that you account for the fact that you're using somebody else in order to get through that specific task. So definitely note down if there are other people that you need to be able to work with during that time. It'll really, really help you as you're kind of going through this punch list. One thing that's also really great to be able to do during this time is putting together your files, your paperwork, the things that you actually need for your home buying purchases. Meaning, we all know when you go and get a mortgage that they really ask for bank statements. They're asking for what your income was last year. Sometimes you need a proof of employment letter. All of those different things. This is a great opportunity to take the time now as you're going from property to property trying to find your next deal to make sure that you have all of that kind of in order and everything kind of accounted for. Next thing you want to make sure to do is to be consistent within your action. This does not mean that we have to go and do everything that we now put on that to-do list all in one day. We really just want to make sure that we are setting aside time on a regular basis. Regular basis is different for you as it's going to be different for me as it's going to be different for other listeners. This is where you want to make sure that you put on your calendar or however you track your time and your tasks and say that this is the time I'm going to dedicate to my real estate investing journey on a regular basis. That could be something saying I'm going to spend 15 minutes a day. And that could be one day, it could be analyzing deals. The next could be searching for your next property. The next day could be making a few phone calls to identify some team members for you. Whichever it is, just make sure that you're always consistently working on your real estate investment journey. You can also time block things. Time blocking means that you're going to give yourself a certain couple hours every single week. Maybe it's just something that you can commit to doing on a Saturday. That is perfectly fine if that's how that works out for you, but make sure to have it scheduled, just like you schedule your lunch breaks, just like you schedule your gym sessions, just like you're going to schedule anything else within your professional career. Make sure to be doing the same thing for real estate. So that way you're always moving forward and you're making sure to check off all of those tasks that you wrote down in the first step that we talked about. One of the next steps that I'm going to share with you, ladies, is actually one of my favorites. This is the idea of delegating. This is figuring out what responsibilities you can give to somebody else to help lighten up your load. So I'm going to take just even that example of what we were talking about with getting pre-approved for your mortgage. When you get pre-approved for your mortgage, there is upfront work you need to do. Once again, you need to identify who that mortgage broker is going to be or that lender is going to be. You need to supply the paperwork. But once you get to that, you're actually really kind of hands off. Now you're just waiting for that information back. So even though that is actually a form of delegation, because now you are able to give that other person the information that they need to go ahead and be successful with their own job and what then they need to come back to you with. But you can also outsource things in your life. This is an incredibly popular idea, and there's ways that you can do this that can be a huge help to you, and you can even do them very cheaply. One of those is by working with a VA, a virtual assistant. A virtual assistant can be really helpful because they can take certain tasks away from you for very, very cheap rates, depending on where you look online, but you can find other people to be able to help kind of do some of that work. So if you have to do some phone calls or some scheduling or meeting with people, some of that stuff can actually be handed off to somebody else, freeing up your time. What's cool about this is you can actually use that VA to outsource some of the tasks you need to do for your real estate investments, but you can also outsource regular things in your life so that way you can focus more on real estate, especially if it is your second, third job side hustle here to be even doing anything within real estate investments. An example of that might look like hiring a cleaning person to come to your home. So now on Saturdays, instead of you spending a couple hours every week cleaning your house, now this is actually something that you could put that time and renegotiate that time within your own life to be able to work on your investment properties. And then now all of a sudden we have this freed up time. So cleaning people, you could definitely do this for cooking, other errands within your life. I think we've all learned over the past year with COVID that there are a ton of different ways that you can outsource those small errands that you don't necessarily have to go strip mall hopping on the weekends to be able to get everything that you need. And you can also get things ordered very, very easily, which was also going to help save a lot of time for you. The fourth idea I want to talk about today and share is the idea of setting deadlines. This is going to kind of tie into that first one with the idea of making sure to list out your to-do list. But we need to make sure that we're setting deadlines for things. Once again, this market is moving incredibly fast. There are things that we need to do, and we need to make sure to get other people empowered to do their jobs based on us being able to provide them with the information that they need. Make sure to be very aware of deadlines for any paperwork that you need to get back to anybody or anything that even now you personally want to accomplish. If this is something right now, if you're a teacher, if once again you're a mom and you're saying, summers might be really difficult for me because my kids are home, Or maybe you're a teacher that's saying, well, summers are a little bit more free for me because I'm off summers and not teaching. Well, make sure to use those times and then say, well, this is now what I need to accomplish in that space and during this time period. It will absolutely make your life so much easier when you're having those things in a nice organized sense. And that's going to help you now with all the craziness that you're dealing with when trying to purchase that property. These are those things that are just going to be able to help you fall into place a little bit more. The next thing that I want you to consider doing is to really just breathe. Sometimes we need that little moment to just take a step back and say, we are overwhelmed, we are tired. There are a lot of things that are going on in our lives that we just sometimes need a little bit of break, and that is perfectly okay to do. I still encourage you to then maybe set a time on your calendar of when you're going to revisit things that maybe weren't working for you then or that you were frustrated with, and to make sure that you're still growing that to-do list so that way you can come back to that whenever it is that you are actually ready to do. But remember that you are human and that we can be tired and that we can also take time off. So I hope that helps somebody out there that feels a little overwhelmed with everything that's been going on lately. Lastly, if you ever need any help figuring out what your next purchase is going to look like, make sure to consider the Lady Landlords Roadmap. The Lady Landlords Roadmap is a 3-hour in-depth situation with me where we go through what is going on for you specifically. We spend all that time together working on what you are looking for your next deal and making sure that you are taking the right path along the way. So I'll put the link down in the show notes for that if you're interested in the Lady Landlords Roadmap. Otherwise, tune in next Tuesday for our next episode of the Lady Landlords podcast.